This happened back in 2005, when I was 18 years old and living in Uvalde, Texas, a small, low-income neighborhood, like so many you find scattered across rural Texas, far from the glow of any major city. The closest real city to me was San Antonio, about an hour and a half away. At the time, I was attending a local community college because it was the only option my parents could afford. Meanwhile, one of my best friends from high school, Andrew, had moved to San Antonio to attend San Antonio College. He was staying in a small apartment just outside the city with a roommate, and his girlfriend was there most of the time too. Since it wasn't too far of a drive, I used to visit him pretty often. One weekend, he asked me to come stay over for the night. So I grabbed the keys to my old 1995 Toyota pickup truck, and trust me, calling it trusty would be generous. That thing was a total piece of junk. The gas gauge in my truck didn't even work, so every time I filled up, I had to reset the trip mileage and just hope I remembered how far I could push it. I took Route 90, the straight highway from Uvalde to San Antonio. It was around 3 p.m. on a Friday, and the road was completely clear. I made it to Andrew's place without any issues. His girlfriend wasn't coming until the next day, so we planned to go out that night. We grabbed some drinks from a liquor store and hung out at his apartment with his roommate for a while. Later, the three of us went to a dive bar that didn't ask too many questions about fake IDs. That was pretty much the night. We got back around 2 a.m. after stopping for food, and I crashed on the couch. The next day started off normal, but things shifted fast. Andrew and his girlfriend were arguing on and off the entire day. As the night went on and they both drank more, it got worse. She started yelling at him right in front of me, and the whole situation became tense and uncomfortable. I didn't drink much that night because I already felt weird about staying over with all that drama going on. Eventually, I decided it was better to just head home. I said my goodbyes and left pretty late, around midnight, maybe a little earlier. Route 90 was completely empty at that hour, just a long stretch of dark highway. I was driving fast, at least fast for my old pickup. Then out of nowhere, the engine started sputtering. My stomach dropped instantly. I had forgotten to fill up the tank. I eased off the gas, but it didn't matter. The engine died. I coasted to the side of the road and tried restarting it a few times, but it was useless. I grabbed my phone, which was just as unreliable as the truck, and tried to get a signal. Nothing. Not even one bar. I couldn't call anyone. All I could do was turn on my hazard lights and wait. I sat there on the side of that dark highway for what felt like forever before I finally saw headlights in the distance. I stepped out and waved my arms as the car got closer, but it sped right past me. No hesitation. No slowing down. About 10 minutes later, another set of headlights appeared. I tried again, waving desperately. Same result. They flew by like I wasn't even there. That's when the reality started sinking in. I felt completely stranded. Part of me thought maybe I should just lock the doors, lean the seat back, and wait for sunrise. At least in the daylight, it wouldn't feel so isolating. So I decided that was it. I'd just sleep in the truck until morning. I climbed back inside, took the key out of the ignition so the battery wouldn't die, and leaned my seat back as far as it would go. Every 10 minutes or so, I'd hear a car rush past on the highway, but I didn't bother trying to flag anyone down anymore. Standing in the dark on the side of an empty road felt risky for me, and probably for whoever was driving by. Eventually, I started drifting off. That's when I heard the sound of a car door shutting somewhere behind me. It snapped me awake instantly. I lifted my head and checked the rear-view mirror. There was a vehicle parked behind my truck, but its headlights were off. I turned around in my seat to get a better look. It was a large pickup truck, sitting there quietly. I couldn't see anyone inside. I couldn't see anyone standing outside either. For a second, I thought maybe someone had pulled over to help. I stepped out of my truck and called out, "Excuse me?" No answer. The highway was silent again. I walked closer to the pickup and peeked inside, just to make sure someone wasn't sitting low in the seat. It looked empty. That didn't make sense. I glanced toward the tree line off the side of the road, thinking maybe the driver had stepped away for a second. Feeling uneasy, I went back to my truck and locked the door. Something about it wasn't right. The headlights were off. No movement, no sound. Then suddenly, tap, tap, tap. I jumped out of my skin. There was a man standing right beside my window, leaning down and staring in at me with a wide smile stretched across his face. I froze. He looked calm. Too calm. "Hey, buddy," he said casually. "Need a hand?" I cracked the window just a little and told him I'd run out of gas. He nodded slowly, still smiling. "That's quite the predicament," he said. "Step out and give me a hand with this real quick." At first, I honestly thought he meant helping him grab a gas can from his truck. That seemed normal enough, so I stepped out and shut my door, expecting him to walk me back to his vehicle. But he didn't move. He just stood there, towering over me, much taller than I'd realized, staring down at me with that same smile. "I need you to empty your pockets," he said calmly. It took a second for his words to sink in. I was a broke college kid driving a dying pickup. I barely had any cash on me, but I wasn't about to hand over the little I had or my phone without a fight. The moment it clicked, I ran. I took off toward the trees without thinking. I might have been small, but I was fast. I glanced back while running and saw him charging after me. The second I hit the trees, I started zigzagging through them, cutting left and right, trying to make it harder for him to follow. Branches slapped against my arms and face, but I didn't slow down until I felt like I'd created enough distance. I ducked behind a thick tree trunk and crouched low, trying to control my breathing. My chest was heaving so loudly, I was sure he could hear it. Then I heard his footsteps getting closer. I forced myself to breathe as quietly as possible. That's when I heard him shout, "I'll kill you, you piece of shit." I don't know if he was just angry and yelling to himself, or if he wanted me to hear it on purpose. Either way, it worked. I was too terrified to move a muscle. Even after his footsteps slowly faded, and I couldn't hear him anymore, I stayed exactly where I was. I didn't trust it. I didn't trust that he was really gone. I remained behind that tree the entire night, eventually lying flat on the ground as I waited for daylight, too afraid to risk going back. When the sky finally started to brighten at dawn, I carefully made my way back toward the highway. His truck was gone. The road looked empty again, like nothing had happened. But when I reached my pickup, both of my doors were wide open. My glove compartment had been rummaged through and cleared out of anything even slightly valuable. My flannel hoodie was missing too, and I'm pretty sure I had something in its pocket. He must have gone through everything while I was hiding in the woods. After a while, I managed to flag down a passing driver who actually stopped. He gave me a ride to the nearest gas station, where I bought a fuel can and filled it up. He drove me back so I could put just enough gas in my truck to make it to a station and fill the tank properly. After that, I went straight home. That night taught me something the hard way. There are people out there who will take advantage of you the moment you're vulnerable. But at the same time, there are still good people too, like the man who stopped to help me when I really needed it. When I was 18, I was reckless and immature, especially behind the wheel. I'd honk impatiently, cut people off, and drive like the rules didn't apply to me. Looking back now, it was unbelievably stupid, and I know if I ever have kids, I'll be much stricter about their driving. Despite my recklessness, I did spend a lot of time on the road. I was going to school about 5 hours away from home, and no matter the day, traffic always clogged up the closer I got. To avoid the nightmare of stop-and-go congestion, I often drove home late at night. That shortened my usual 4 5-hour trip down to about 3 hours. It was the start of winter break, right after the fall semester ended. Most of my friends had already left for home, but I waited until late at night to head out anything to avoid traffic. I drove an old Mazda 3 that I had abused more times than I can count. One of my bad habits was running the tank nearly empty. Friends in the car would always comment on it, and I'd proudly assure them that I still had at least 30 miles left even when the needle hit E. That night, I learned just how wrong I had been. About an hour into my drive, the needle was sitting firmly on E. I was pushing my luck, hoping for a gas station sign instead of actually checking the map. Suddenly, the car started making strange noises, jolting like it was alive and angry. My stomach sank as I realized I had probably run the tank dry, and this time, there was no backup plan. I took the first exit ramp, hoping it would lead me straight to a gas station. The moment I hit the ramp, I realized how wrong I was. It was pitch dark, no streetlights, just dense woods on either side. I was terrified to slow down too much, worried I wouldn't have enough gas to find a station. I blew through the stop sign at the end of the ramp and made a sharp, fast turn onto the intersecting road, which was just as dark and surrounded by thick trees. My heart sank as the car eventually rolled to a stop and the engine died. Things got worse when I pulled out my phone, no bars. I had T-Mobile, the worst possible reception once you're far from a city. I stupidly tried calling 911, forgetting that it wouldn't work without service. Panic set in. I turned on my hazard lights and just waited, hoping someone would pass by. Minutes dragged on, then finally I saw headlights approaching. I flashed my lights desperately. The car passed me, made a U-turn, and pulled up on the grass behind me. I didn't know who it was getting out. I was an 18-year-old boy alone on a dark road, defenseless. I cracked my window just a little as a man approached. I told him I had run out of gas and needed help. He offered to take me to the nearest station. He was balding, wore glasses, and seemed somewhat trustworthy. With no other choice, I cautiously got out, locking my doors first. His car was a black Honda, probably a 2010, and it smelled strange. I couldn't figure out exactly what. He made another U-turn and started driving in the same direction he had been going before. He asked casual questions, like where I was from. I told him honestly, I was driving home from school. He said he lived nearby and that not many out-of-towners take this exit into their quiet little town. The road we were on had no buildings, no lights, nothing but darkness stretching ahead. The road was nothing but dark woods on either side. I nervously asked if he knew of any gas stations nearby. He said, "Yeah, just a ways up the road," in that calm, casual tone. At first I thought I could trust him. But then I started hearing bumps and thumps coming from the back of the car, like something in the trunk was moving. I tried convincing myself it was just the road or a loose object, but my gut told me something was horribly wrong. He kept talking, trying to distract me, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling growing in my chest. Finally, we reached a small cluster of lights, a diner, a few houses, the first sign of civilization since I got in his car. As we stopped at a red light, the quiet felt heavy, and then I heard it, unmistakable screaming from the trunk, followed by thuds and bangs. My blood ran cold. I looked at him, and in that split second, everything clicked. I unbuckled my seatbelt, threw open the door, and bolted. He lunged at me, trying to grab me back into the car, but instead of chasing me, he ran to slam his passenger door and then floored it down the street. I sprinted into the diner, yelling for help. The staff let me use their phone to call 911, and soon multiple police officers arrived, taking down every detail: his car, his appearance, where he had picked me up. They even gave me a ride back to my car to confirm the pickup location and help me contact AAA so I could get fuel for my Mazda. That night was hands down the scariest experience of my life. I was shaken the entire way home, thinking about the person screaming in that trunk and the danger I had narrowly escaped. For all I know, that man could have been taking me somewhere far worse. I was lucky, pure luck, that the red light gave me the chance to run. Even now, the memory makes my heart race. I live in Burke County, North Carolina, in a small town called Morgan. Life out here is quiet and simple, mostly peaceful, with the occasional odd character passing through, but nothing too serious. My husband and I own a nice piece of land, and my work schedule keeps me on my toes, switching between day and night shifts. This happened on a night when I was driving home after a long night shift. It had to be around 3 a.m. My phone was nearly dead, I was starving, and all I wanted was some food and the comfort of home. I stopped at a local gas station to grab $10 worth of gas and picked up a packaged sandwich which I ate inside the tiny gas station cafe. There was a sketchy guy in the corner who kept glancing at me until he eventually left without buying anything. After finishing my food, I went outside to fill up my tank and then climbed back into the car. The smell of gasoline was unusually strong, lingering inside the vehicle. The roads here are narrow, dark, and twisty at night, so I drove slowly, especially given how exhausted I was. Everything seemed normal until something unexpected happened. Suddenly, the needle on my gas gauge dropped straight to E, and the low gas light started beeping loudly. I froze. I'm not a car person, and I had never run out of gas before, plus, I had just filled up. At first, I thought the gauge was malfunctioning, so I pulled over and restarted the car, but the needle stubbornly stayed on E. I tried to drive again, but the engine died completely. Panic set in immediately. I grabbed my phone and called my husband, thanking my luck that he picked up on the first ring. Between shaky breaths, I told him what happened and asked how my car could possibly run out of gas after a fill-up. As I stepped out of the car, the sharp smell of gasoline hit me, and I mentioned it to him. He quickly realized it sounded like I had a leak and promised to head over right away, while also calling roadside assistance. That's when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a car approaching, but with no headlights. My stomach dropped, and my heart started racing. Something about the quiet, dark road made every sound feel amplified, and now I had no idea who or what was coming. The approaching car suddenly stopped not far behind mine. My mind raced. That sketchy guy from the gas station flashed into my thoughts, and I quickly asked my husband if there was any chance he had done something to my car. His tone immediately changed, tense and worried. "Yes," he said. "There's a chance he may have cut your fuel line." I didn't fully understand what that meant, but I knew one thing: I needed to get away. I took the keys out of the ignition, shut the door, and locked it so the headlights would go dark. My phone was barely alive at 2%, so I told my husband to text me when he got close. Without thinking twice, I bolted off the road, sprinting toward the first house I could see. The driveway was long, the property sprawling, and every light in the house was off. I rang the doorbell multiple times, my heart pounding in my ears. Finally, a light flicked on, and the door creaked open. An older man, probably in his 60s, looked at me, clearly startled awake. I explained quickly that I needed a safe place to hide and charge my phone. After a moment of hesitation, he opened the door fully and let me in. I asked if I could borrow an iPhone charger. He said he'd look for one and invited me to take a seat in the living room. The warm light and quiet inside felt like a small island of safety amid the dark, twisted roads outside. I sat down in my nurse scrubs, my mind racing and my body still tense from running through the dark roads. The man called from the kitchen, asking if I wanted some water. "Yes, please," I replied automatically. But then, in the living room, I noticed his reflection in a mirror that looked into the kitchen. I watched him fill a cup, and my stomach dropped when I saw him drop something into the water. He walked out of view, but the faucet ran for a solid 30 more seconds before shutting off. He returned with the glass, handed it to me, and then sat silently, watching me. He asked me to explain the situation again. I told him I just needed to charge my phone to contact my husband. "Oh, right," he said, and went upstairs. My phone was on 1%, so I used the last bit of battery to send my current location to my husband just in case. I glanced at the glass of water. There was no smell, nothing that seemed off, but my instincts screamed that he had tampered with it. I froze, knowing I had to make a decision: stay and try to charge my phone, or run immediately. My heart pounded as I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. He called out that he didn't have any iPhone chargers, only Android ones. Without thinking twice, I got up and walked straight for the door, knowing I couldn't trust a single second longer in that house. I'm not an idiot. The moment I stepped outside, I ran down the long driveway toward the road, my stomach churning. I couldn't believe it. 2 separate, terrifying incidents from 2 different men, all in one night. I stayed close to the trees, creeping along the side of the dark road, and sent my updated location to my husband before my phone finally died. I waited, frozen, until familiar headlights appeared. Relief washed over me when I saw it was my husband. I waved frantically and jumped into his truck, letting all my emotions spill out as I cried, telling him everything that had just happened. He drove us back to my car, and I noticed the car that had been behind mine was gone. My back window was shattered, and it was clear someone had gotten into the back seat, though thankfully nothing of real value had been taken. My car battery was also dead. When I told him about the man who may have tried to drug me, his fury was instant. He wanted to break down the man's door right then and there. I convinced him to wait for the tow truck. After a long while, it arrived, and my car was taken to the dealership for inspection the next day. My husband was right. The car had been vandalized, and the fuel line had been completely cut. I was grateful to have the next few days off work. I needed time to mentally recover from the night. The idea that I had narrowly escaped being a victim twice in a single evening was almost too much to process. The fear, the adrenaline, and the sheer luck that kept me alive stayed with me long after the ordeal ended.